within the Black international economic engine. Well, we worked in those days. We had NAFTA, which is now the USMCA. There's
Mhm.
CARICOM, which is the trade agreement of the Caribbean nations. Mercosur, which is Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay. There was another agreement for the other countries in South America as well, had their own agreement. So this, at the time, the FTAA, the idea was to build a trade bloc for the Western Hemisphere. And but as I mentioned, but what didn't come to fruition because most of the countries went ahead and started doing bilateral trade deals, and that's where we were going as a world. We were definitely on this path of more and more bilateral deals. We were looking at a world of free trade where everybody was open until a few weeks ago.
And
Yeah.
and you did case when we talk about bilateral, that's two countries talking about what their trade agreement will be. And two countries will come together like Canada and Mexico. Well, here it was for Canada, Mexico, and the US and say, come up with special agreements on, if you let this in my country at this rate, I'll let this in your country at this rate. And it works the same way with tax treaties, like, right? So we have agreements on, oh, if you tax my dividends at 0%, any company that makes a dividend in your country at 0%, I'll tax you at 0%. So yeah, and then case, so historically with trade policy and how you have seen um tariffs impact, traditionally. Give us an idea of what your thoughts are on what is currently happening and what impact that makes.
Yeah, it is extremely difficult. So we're all in business, and business likes to plan. We make strategic plans. We plan for the year, we plan for the quarter, we plan for 10 years. And how do you plan in an environment where you don't even know what's happening from day to day? And especially where the government has made some grand announcements about what it would like to see happen. But then if you're a business person, you're thinking, well, am I going to make an investment? Is this really real? So for example, the government wants to reshore factories and reindustrialize. Now, I don't think that's ever going to work because the world has passed that by. In the sense that one of my favorite saying is that the Stone Age didn't end because we ran out of stones. New technology took us to the next level, and I think that's still what's going to happen. But let's say you have a factory overseas right now, and you're thinking about bringing it back to the U.S. Are you going to make that investment in an environment where you're not sure what's going to happen next? So that's the biggest impact I feel right now, is that it just sort of paralyzes business. Everybody's waiting. Let's see what happens. But at the same time, you can't just sit on your hands and ignore the economy. So you start to look at, okay, how do we deal with tariffs? So you right now you have a product or a service, you have a price, you have a cost. So what's changing? Are the cost of your inputs going to change? Are you bringing in products from overseas that help you build your product? And if that's going to change and that's going to increase your cost, can you stay competitive? One thing about having a 10% across the board tariff, you're like, oh, okay, everybody's got up 10%. We should remain competitive. But then what happens if you're in a country that's being targeted for an even higher tariff? Or you're getting part of your inputs from a country that's getting higher tariffs on that particular product. So you start to then you really do have to think that through. And are you able to absorb those costs? I mean, some people certainly have huge margins. So like think of luxury goods where their margins are 50, 60, 70%. So they're like, okay, well, we can absorb the costs and still make a profit. Can you take advantage of new technologies and be more productive? Could you
Mhm.
use AI in your business in a way that allows you to reduce costs? Or robotics, if you're if you're in manufacturing. So you can be thinking on one hand, I want to make an investment, but I'm afraid I don't know what's happening with this economy. But you can't just ignore it. You do have to keep going forward if you intend to stay in business, because everybody else is going to. And that's the thing. It's a very everybody's sort of asking, what are these tariffs going to do in the end? Because if
Yeah.
if trade, the idea is, oh, we're going to raise all this money, but if trade comes to a standstill, we're not raising any money from tariffs. So then if we get to the point where everybody drops tariffs to zero, we're not raising money from the tariffs. And if we have trade deals with everybody, there's all sorts of exemptions and loopholes and all these other things. People start using other countries to get their products in because they got a better deal than the other one. Then we sort of have that chaotic situation, which really makes it difficult. So it is a challenging market environment, but keep in mind that the key idea behind all of it of global trade is not going anywhere. Everybody, even the United States, is in some ways dependent on trade for certain products and services, and that is going to continue. So you also have to be aware of what has to keep happening. Excuse me, what has to keep happening.
So, Case, talk to us about Canada and how are Canadians feeling about the U.S. American products? You know, what are you all seeing in Canada?
Yeah, it's really sad. So we have very strong ties to Canada. Of course, I grew up there. I have family there and friends there. They love to send me pictures of in the store where it says, you know, buy Canadian or this is a Canadian product. It's actually all marked up the store. This is this well, I wouldn't say so much the tariff war as the talk of the 51st state has really driven
Yeah,
Canadians into a frenzy.
yeah,
But and it's actually it's sad because so let me remind everyone, Canada of course is your neighbor to the north. 40 million people stretched out over 3,000 miles from the Atlantic to the Pacific. It's one long thin line of the population, and the ninth largest economy in the world, more than 2 trillion. But about a third of it is dependent on exports, and about 3/4 of that is to the United States. So this is a country that is absolutely focused on ties to the US. And to be insulted, so to speak, to have their political sovereignty challenged was very upsetting to Canadians. And the backlash has been something I've never seen, where Canadians openly saying they're not buying American, they're not traveling to the United States, they don't want to do anything in the US. And also feeling the other part of the political side, there's been a lot of stories at the border, people who have
yeah.
been held, even in jail, they because of they work permits or things like that. So there's like even a fear, which I've never ever seen before. So for businesses, it's very, very difficult because Canadians right now are not buying American products. Now, that said, of course, things like cars they can't avoid because Canada has no car industry of its own. So you can't name a Canadian car. So you have to. So anybody who is thinking of buying a car this year, now they might be looking at foreign cars, but those are expensive by being non-North American. But that those are expensive as well. And I think and the other piece that a lot of people don't talk about is Canadians are big spenders in the U.S. Travel. In the winter, Canadians have long, cold, dark winters, and literally millions of Canadians will come to the U.S. through the winter months. They have homes in Florida, homes in Arizona, homes in California, and they're trying to sell them now or rent them out to Americans because they're not coming down anymore. Canadians are huge investors in the US real estate and they're not buying. The city of Palm Springs, which is near just about 2 hours south of here, in just sort of east of downtown Los Angeles, that city is having a huge push to try and bring Canadians back because they're so dependent on that Canadian, those snowbirds they're called, the people who come down in the winter. So the tariffs are having extraordinary impact, and the impact is even going to be felt in the election. Canadian election is Monday. It's before this all started, it looked like the Conservative Party would win easily, and now it looks like it will be a majority Liberal government. In Canada, Liberal tends to mean more like the Democratic Party. But it's almost all because of what's happened with the tariffs and the issues with and the political sovereignty issues as well.
Yeah, we saw the mayor in Ontario, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was so adamant, and they were going to shut the power off, and he was. I mean, it was so um, fascinating. I talked with our partners in Canada about what is the market like, particularly for services.
Mm-hmm.
Where there are some exemptions, and so he was like, "Oh, but Melissa, people are really anti-American right now."
Yeah.
And justifiably so. I think that many of us understand that is an insult to say you're going to be the 51st state. And then also to have here, the tourism impact has been just incredible for Canadians not coming down. Not just Canadians, but just in general, were coming to the US. So it's really negatively impacting our community. So let me ask you, what about creating trade blocks within our own community? You know,
Mhm.
where what we're saying is when you think import export, right? So it would be great to add a tariff for other communities selling into our community, right? But if you look at and evaluate what percentage of businesses export into our community, right? If you look at our community as a trade block, and then what percentage of our businesses sell into other communities. So,
Mhm.
how can we form a trade block within our community in order to sell amongst ourselves? Because one of the things DEI has been a tremendous rollback, in so many places in the country. But a response to that is if you don't want to do business with me, I don't want to do business with you. So how do we create that type of trade block?
Yeah, it's interesting. It has to be almost the publicity. I'm thinking of the Target boycott
Hmm.
and people going online onto social media and posting the alternatives. Oh, I think whoever is Apple's iPhone, if you could mute.
Yeah, I muted them.
You did, okay. Uh, so we saw with social media people going online and telling people, hey, you can get products cheaper over here, or giving them those ideas. Now, can you openly create a trade block? That is really going to depend on what people need. There's no doubt when push comes to shove, if the only store in town is a Target, that's where you're going to do your shopping because it will cost you more to drive 20 miles to the next town, maybe to a black owned business. Um, so but the idea behind supporting each other and supporting each other's businesses and letting it be known that what you're the alternative for. If you think about in a store where you see, compare the price to such and such, that's the type of thing you want to look at and see where what you want to make it as easy as possible for your customers
Hmm.
to come to you instead of going to somewhere else. Or where people are now, if they're looking for replacements, like in Canada, for example, where obviously prior to the last couple of months, people were buying, they didn't even care about the origin of where a product was. Then this massive publicity built up around, okay, now here's the difference. We're going to publicly identify what the Canadian products are. So when you're in the store, you know which one you want to pull off the shelf. And that's the type of thing that you have to have. You have to have some level of publicity that points out to your customers, here's the block of products and services that you could be accessing if you want to support the community and what the community's goals are.
Yeah, I think the Buy Black certification through the U.S. Black Chamber is so important, and that all of us should actually register and get that certification because that is a certification that will prepare you for federal contracting, in addition to having you to be identified. And it actually was created so that the government can specify which businesses and which percentage out of the quote unquote minority group is actually Black and receiving funding. And so, but it always strikes me so odd when you have Black-owned businesses say, "Oh, I don't want to be identified as Black. I don't want to be identified as minority." And this is the linchpin. They say because it will. I compete at the same level as everybody else, as if by being identified as a Black company, you automatically are lowered in terms of your ability to deliver. But I'm telling you, as somebody who has worked in the government, I'm telling you straight up, those other people, they have zero hesitation in identifying that they went to this university, their parents are these people, they go to this country club, they are in this, and I only see it amongst us to say, oh, I don't want to be identified as a Black-owned business. Whereas if you understood how many more doors that would open for you and how that would connect you to more people, because who's focused on selling to your community? Like when you have a Black-owned business and you pull up their website and you don't see one Black person in sight. That
Yeah,
it's the oddest thing in the world, because the majority of the people, you're assuming that other communities have the majority of the money, which
right.
they do, but we have money as well. And so changing your mindset from, and trust me, you're looking at the Amazon queen. I used to be. Oh, my husband would be like, if one more Amazon package comes, every single thing I bought
Yeah.
from Amazon, because their businesses, it makes it easier, the speed, But look at how many people sacrificed for us during the civil rights movement in terms of boycotting and not riding on buses and carpooling to transport people, and the sacrifices that they made. And I can't go through a little inconvenience to go to a local Black-owned business. I can't take the time to find a. That's how I had to coach myself, because that Amazon button was sweet to me. So
Yeah, there's no competing with that Amazon button. And because of the pricing, we talk about tariffs. Amazon is able to source from around the world. So you have in
mhm.
your head, well, I'm only going to spend $20 on this sweater, and you go into Amazon, you find a nice sweater for $20. And it could be coming from anywhere. A lot of people don't bother to look. They have the price that they're willing to pay, and Amazon has that range of prices that are there from products coming in from everywhere. So that is challenging.
It
So
is, but when I saw how fast Amazon dropped me, and I do say me, and that's how we have to take it personally. If you don't want to do business with me, why am I going to beat your door down to give you my money?
yeah.
That's economic ignorance. There's no way I'm going to position myself like that. So that's why we're saying to businesses, when we were talking earlier, what we're encouraging everyone to do. We're going to give everybody an AI prompt tonight in order to look at your supply chain and your supply and demand, because we want you to take the initiative to make your supply chain Black, to partner with other businesses that are operating at a high level in order to provide those services. And what I mean by that, we have everything. If you need a freight forwarder, we have Black freight forwarders. If you're selling your products into a country where the tariff is 10% and you're still able to export your products from a Black-owned shipping company to a Black freight forwarder to a Black-owned shipping company to a shipping company that will deliver your products and services in port. We have those types of companies that are within our network. And so, what we're asking all of our businesses to do is to take the initiative, just like people who sacrificed in the civil rights movement, or even our people who were in slavery or in Jim Crow. It requires a sacrifice. It requires a sacrifice. So inconvenience might be out of the window for a while. But can you imagine if you make your supply chain Black, or as Black as possible? Because I'm going to tell you one of the things that I see done, and I do or have done, is we analyze supply chains literally from the raw material all the way into the production, the product being put in hand. Or we'll look at the service literally from the ideation all the way to the R&D, all the way to the mapping document, all the way down to the service being delivered to the customer. Because when you're looking at a global business, supply value is determined at different places in that chain. So if I have if I'm calling the shots from the US and I create a tech center in India, and then I have another center that might be in Vietnam and another center in China, all of those different places are going to say they add value to that chain. And so we have to, for being an international tax lawyer, I have to break down each one of those locations and determine what's the value in each one of those chains? Well, that is how you analyze and you look at what supply and demand is for your chain. If it's a product, if it's a service. And if in every one of those, I can tell you these people are American, these people are from India, these people are from Vietnam, these people are from China. I can break it down for you. And why do we do that? Because you have to look at what the costs are in that particular country. And what we're paying somebody in India is not going to be what you pay somebody that's in America. So when you have the ability to do that, and the set of questions that we're going to give you tonight, you take those questions and you ask AI, Chat GPT, to answer those questions for your specific business so that you can look at your supply chain, your supply and demand, and you can determine how in this market, because the current plan that you have right now was prior to January 20th or 21st. So you need a plan for right now. And you don't want to go back and regurgitate what you have done because this is not a market that anyone has existed in before. So you want something new, you want something innovative, you want something, you don't change your business line, you just pivot in terms of how can you make your supply chain more streamlined. And what I'm suggesting, what we're suggesting is make it black. If there are 15 points in your supply chain, make 80% of them black. So that is really going to change the game. That's where you start to do trade with each other and you work amongst Black owned businesses and you figure out, and you need to get affiliated. You need to be in some association, organization. Stop sitting on the sideline trying to do this by yourself. That's the worst thing in business, where you sitting on the sideline trying to figure out all this stuff by yourself, when there is an answer to help you to move out of the current situation that you're in. So, Case, let me ask you the next question that we're talking about.
And I'll just
So,
say, can I
yeah,
interrupt
go
1 second just to mention technology? Because I think
yeah.
everything that you were just talking about, part of that is being smart about technology and using it and incorporating it in your businesses and having even building that Black ecosystem. If somebody wants to build that app, or some kids that need some work, an app that where you put in, which becomes your Amazon, where you can put in, but it's all Black owned businesses. I mean, something like that is what's missing as well.
I definitely agree. How would you recommend that we improve our technology skills?
Yeah, it's going to be a couple of things. I think we have to identify where we actually have those skills. And I know, Melissa, you were doing a lot of work with the HBCUs and
Mhm.
the colleges. If we have, sometimes it is the most they say underrepresented, but it's a sort of unknown talent that there could be one of those schools have a really robust computer programming program, or maybe they've had a bunch of entrepreneurs come out of it. We need to find out where those incubators are, because right now
Mhm.
everyone just looks at Silicon Valley. And if you're at Stanford, they're lining up at your door. But you could be sitting in Virginia or Maryland, and you're at an HBCU, or you're at a community college, and you're at bright light, and there has to be a path for you to get out there into the world, because the technology I talked earlier about productivity, if we can bring our costs down by being smarter about technology and using technology more effectively, that's a competitive advantage. And soon they start coming to us because it's the best product at the best price.
Yeah, and not only that, we have people in our community that are angel investors. We
Mm-hmm.
have private equity investors. So there are definitely opportunities for us to be able to grow our business. But Case, I think the first step is changing your mindset.
Yes. Yes.
I think the first part is you have to be in the mind of an empire builder. Like, to me, if you look at people in past civilizations, they never thought, let me go over, the Mayans didn't go over, to the Incas to say, oh, let me let you lead this part of my economy or build my economy. They weren't going to other people, but it's the mindset to go to your own people to build for us so that we are in a position to grow our own businesses.
Yeah.
because
And
we
this is the
have a
best
lot of
time to
young
do it.
people. We
Yes.
have a lot
Yeah.
of young people.
Yeah, and they need to be encouraged. I think they look at Silicon Valley as well and think, oh well, that's where it all happens, but it doesn't have to happen there. And in fact, it shouldn't. America should have 20 Silicon Valleys because
Mhm,
we're going to need that in terms of we. I said mentioned earlier, I don't think reindustrialization is going to work. We have to go to the
mhm.
next level of technology in the world and build that advanced technology society, which is knowledge workers, innovation, creativity. We certainly have the people. We just need to give the encouragement, like you say, and people need also not to be afraid to go to and pitch just pitch their ideas like the other kids do. I went to a pitch event. It was one time in Las Vegas. It was open to the public. I think I mean, there must have been 60 people who came in, literally off the street to pitch to all of these investors from around the country. I think I counted three or four Black, people that were there. I only counted a handful of women. And I thought, well, I found out about this event, so where's everybody else? They can't say it. And I actually just happened to sit next to the organizer of the event at the lunch, and I was saying, and I was asking him about that. And he's a white man, and he was saying, "Hey, he said I came to Las Vegas because I'm looking for that hidden talent that is not sitting in Silicon Valley or in Austin, Texas." And he said, I promoted it, I made it open to the public, and this is who showed up. And so yeah, we have to take advantage of the opportunities that are out there.
Yeah, you definitely do. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is a strategy around what I think is happening and why you see things as they are in the economy. And then, Case, I wanted you to chime in. So many of you know that many of the federal workers have or are being fired or riffed or let go. And one of the things that you see is the level of craziness and disorder because literally some people go to work and their badges don't work, or you've been there. Like one of my friends, she had been at the IRS literally for 30 years. And first she got a notice that her position, that her office was being closed, and then she got a position that she was being fired, basically, a reduction in force. She was 50, she's 50 years old, 30 years, so she's too young to retire, right? And so she spent 30 years of her life at this organization, and now, she's in the streets. So as you look at people, these different agencies shutting down these positions, the work still has to be done. The work is not going to go anywhere. So my belief is that they are going to fire people to be able to say they reduce the workforce, and then they're going to create federal contracts. And the federal contracts would allow them to say, oh, we increased the number of small businesses, which is an uptick. We increased the number of jobs because the number of jobs are small businesses hire the most number of people. And then thirdly, that we increase federal contracting. And I think that shifting that to a lot of people in the private sector is what the game is going to be, is what the play is going to be, because the thought process is that the government itself is bloated, but with privatization, you're going to get a better outcome. Now, if somebody could explain to me how you fire people and bring them back to work and then put them on administrative leave where you paying them and they don't have to work, if I could see how that is efficient, I would be a trillionaire, So so this is why we're telling at Black and Global our businesses to position yourself for federal contracting, because and not just federal contracting in the US. You want contracting in the US and a footprint in another country to be able to have position yourself to be able to be in both two different economies, because you can see now if you had opened a business in another economy, well, I guess the world is reeling though around all of this craziness actually, and the stock markets are all over the place. I was looking at the African market and how it has tanked. I mean, the number of countries that have higher than 10% tariffs imposed are quite a few. So it's really challenging in many different markets. but you have an opportunity like many, you see how these countries are so dependent on America, so linked to America. And then America with one swipe of a pen can change your life. No, you don't want to live like that. You don't want to live like that. You want to be in multiple countries so that you have a better opportunity to manage what your cash flow is. So, in preparing yourself for the federal contracting, we're giving you a list of AI prompt questions for you to run for your business so that you can update what you're going to be focusing on in this economy. And one of the key points for these AI prompts that we put is for you to focus on this economy. And this economy, you mean from today, whatever day you're putting those prompts in, and take that outcome and make adjustments to your business. And then one of our partners is having a cohort for federal contracting. They still have their funding. They don't know how long they're going to have their funding, but they still have their funding. So we need, their program is starting in September. So we're going to give you all the link to that to actually position yourself for small businesses. Now, listen to what I'm telling you. 3% of federal contracting prior to the Biden administration, 3% of federal contracting went to underserved communities. 97% of federal contracts went to white male-owned companies. And do you understand how these people fight us over DEI and 3%? It's insane. You are going to fight us over 3%. You have 97% of the market, and you're going to fight us over 3%. And of that 3%, 70% of that small portion went to white women. You're going to fight us over that. There's no, I'm not shopping at Amazon, Target, Walmart. You don't want to do business with me? That it's personal to me. Deuces, I don't want to do business with you. And so, but with the federal government, I pay my taxes. I pay my taxes, so I'm entitled to a piece of this pie. So what we don't want Black-owned businesses to do is to sit back and just wait and do nothing and let these people make all the decisions. No, position yourself to be able to get federal contracts, because when you get federal contracts, that will strengthen you to get a global contract. And we can show you how to do all of that. But what we want you to do is to apply for this scholarship that's coming up in September and do that program and have a long-term mentality. And when they ask you for who referred you, put in Black and Global, because we get a special, we don't get paid. Let me be clear. We do not get paid any money. And honestly, I forget what the special is other than the fact that they give us spots. But make sure you put Black and Global in, because it'll qualify you for whatever the scholarship is. You see, here's the thing. Their DEI requirements were set under the Biden administration. So they still have to meet those numbers. And so so for us, they give us a certain number of slots, but I don't remember what it is. But just apply and start this program in September and have a long-term game plan, and not a short-term game plan, long-term game plan, because they can position you to apply for these federal contracts. They're going to help you find the federal contracts. They're going to help you bid on the federal contracts. And trust me, it's going to be a proliferation of federal contracts, because that the administration thinks that's going to make them look better. That's what I think is happening. So we're going to give you the AI prompt, and we're going to drop the link to, for those of you who registered, we're going to actually send it out to you as well by email so that you can register for the program in September. Or it's competitive, so you actually have to compete for the scholarship. And then the other one is for the AI prompts. So Case, what do you think about my prediction that this is what's happening in the government?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, because like you say, the work has to be done. So how is it going to be done? You know, they're going to, and it's not uncommon. It happens in corporate all the time. They get rid of a particular um, division and then they outsource. So you talk about the billions that the consulting firms are losing in their federal government contracts, but they do similar work like that for private corporations as well all the time. And they're doing it because those companies don't want to make the long-term investment in a permanent asset of a particular division, especially if it's they're like say putting up one project or just pivoting to something new. They don't want to make a long-term investment. And I know you're the tax lawyer and you know the accounting shenanigans that they get into. But essentially, it's to say instead of they could write off the one-time expense of paying for those consulting fees instead of having an ongoing liability of an employee that they have to have, give pay out whatever they're paying, maybe it's paying into their 401ks or their healthcare and all these other things. So it is a strategy for sure. But I also want to say, what you're saying, Melissa, about staying international, staying global, having multiple markets. It's extremely important. I think part of this, it may be looking like America is going into itself, but it just can't be done in the 21st century. Everybody is online all day, which means you're exposed to the entire world all day long. You're going to hear things, you're going to see things, you're going to want products and services from around the world. A lot of people buy things that they don't know where it's coming from. And so it's a global economy. It's a global economy. We are global citizens in the global neighborhood, and tariffs and things like that might come up, but you want to be able to keep an eye on the fact that you have skills that are needed around the world. And so for so many of the people that are being laid off, and it's a traumatic time for them, but it'll at some point they will sit down, do an inventory of their skills, and realize that there are other countries that are looking for them. And you can, and that's exporting when you are providing a service to foreigners who are paying you in some other currency, that is exporting, or they're paying you in US dollars from their bank accounts in another country. And that is the opportunity. I think it almost creates, I mean, I know it's a very difficult time, but there's a certain freedom in it because you now you need to go out there and see, and of course it's more difficult to go out, it's away from your government job, but sharpening your skills, learning something new, talking to people somewhere else in the world, it will keep you engaged, it will keep you involved, and eventually I think it'll be very lucrative as as the years go by, because the rest of the world will continue to develop. This is the world's biggest market because we spend so much money and we go into debt. And if you look at, if you really seriously look at it, and this is sort of the elephant in the room, the US government is sitting on, what is it, $35 trillion debt. American households have another $20 trillion debt. All this money that's been spent, we are the economy that spends without a care in the world. And that's why we are so attractive to the rest of the world. But then what's going to happen when there's no more supports under all that spending? And so you want to make the rest of the world is going to be moving forward, developing, growing, building new cities. They need human resources. They need a lot of knowledge capital, and you're the ones who have it. And so I think I take that optimistic view that that all these opportunities will continue to exist on a global scale. So you want to make sure you're always honing your skills, but always thinking global at the same time.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that because being a digital nomad working from other countries, I mean, many people would be welcome to, many people are leaving the States just in general. People are moving out of the States, and many people don't want to come to the States like they did in the past. And I think that if you take your knowledge and you package it to be able to sell it, but case it's such a scary proposition, because you really don't know. You don't know how to do it. You don't know the first steps to take. You want to do it, but how do you go down that road? And at Black and Global, we help businesses to be able to do that, and we help talent to be able to do that. But I just think that you should never, like, I have never been a fan of the hustle culture, right? I mean, in this sense, I'm very conservative. I like what I do, and having 3, 4, 5 different hustles going on at the same time. That's too much stress for me. I like to live well. I like luxury, not luxury products, but in the sense that, I just don't want to, at this point in my life, I'm married, I have children, I enjoy my family. So I've never wanted to be that 50, 60 hour a week person for anything. And my mindset used to be, in order to own a business, you have to work 50, 60 hours a week. I did not know that was not true. Now, this is from someone who is a feminine boss, right? It's different from men, right? Because the male culture is typically what has dominated the thought process, because men don't necessarily, they're not primary on the children, they're not primary on the home. So if you're a woman and you are running a business and you have a home, and you want to be a present parent like I do and a present partner, you stress yourself out trying to do that whole hustle thing with all those different things that are going on. That caveat being said, I got to update that a little bit in this market in this way. If you have a job, you need a business on the side. If you have a job, you need a business on the side. And that is from, so I'm telling you, as a person who was afraid to start a business, because I thought I would have to work 50, 60 hours a week in order to run a business. And I lived in fear, and I always thought I could not pay myself. I don't know why I thought that. I didn't think I could earn enough money or as much money as I make in working on a job. So I was always afraid to let go of that. And then I had more confidence in their economy than I had in myself. And I'm just being transparent about, what my fears that I struggle with. But just the power in owning a business and growing into my own, to define your own. You don't have to work 50, 60 hours a week. That's not the life that you have. You get to define for yourself, what that looks like. So that freedom that you're talking about, right? It's a mindset shift. It was a big mindset shift for me. And so what we are saying to people, men and women, is that if you have a job, you have to have a business. And listen, you don't have to be 100% owner in the business. You can partner with other people. You can invest with other people, and you can contribute your skills and talent, and they contribute their skills and talent. But you got to have a footprint somewhere else, because we perceive that federal government jobs, them good government jobs, them the most secure things. We thought, no, there's no such thing. So we all have to position ourselves to have a business that is in addition to whatever our primary source of income is, so that you can, take care of your family. So with that case, we're coming up on the end. We're going to have some questions. We have about 13 minutes left. So we're going to open the floor up for Q&A. So anyone that has a question, you can come off your mic and ask your question or comment.
Or you could put a question in the chat.
Oh, yeah, you can put a question in the chat. That works too. Let's see. Do we have any questions in the chat? Let's see. What questions do we have?
One thing I like to do is make sure everybody has a to-do list. And when you're thinking about, we were talking about tariffs, and you have your business and you're thinking about, what do I need to look at to understand how tariffs are going to affect me? So we're talking about the price of your product or service, right? So you're looking at how much does it cost you to make that product or service, and what are those inputs? Now, we were just talking about having another business, having an online business. I have online businesses. So does it affect me? And I might start thinking, no, it doesn't affect me. I don't have them. I don't have physical products that I'm purchasing from other countries. But then I think, well, I am very dependent on cloud services, website in the cloud, landing pages in the cloud. So, and that's a very high electricity. And I think about Canada again. What if Canada cuts off the electricity? Or what if Canada raises, the electricity prices, and suddenly that's going to affect the cost of hosting a website or even using social media, So if you're buying ads, so you want to think about what are your inputs, what is it costing you to make your product or service, and you might not know for sure, if anything that you're using is affected directly by tariffs, but you could probably make a pretty good guess that there might be areas. And then you want to take a look at, okay, what can I do with my productivity to lower my costs if I think it's going to have an impact on my bottom line? Where can I lower my costs? Do I need to look at AI? Do I need to do some training on AI to see how I can use it in my business? Could I outsource? Maybe there are folks in Africa. I know, Melissa's you have that service. Maybe there are people in Africa that could do part of the work, and that would help me lower my costs. So you want to be thinking about those things as we go forward now, and how will tariffs affect you? What cost of inputs, and then how can you lower productivity?
So applying
lower your cost through productivity.
Applying that to Black and Global. So the tariffs definitely impacted us, right? Definitely, because we are helping our businesses to export their products into other countries. But my thought process was not, oh, this is going to hammer all of our businesses. My thought process was, okay, how can we win in this situation? Mm-hmm. What is it that we can do? What pivot can we make in order to win? And not only that, the people at the government agencies are being fired. So we work with government agencies. Yeah. So that impacts our business. So our pivot was, and we had started to do this at the end of last year, but I have to thank Quincy and Precious because they really have picked up where we pre-vet contracts. So whereas before what we were doing is we would help a business and then we would work with them going to the government to find the contract, but instead now we pre-vet contracts. So we find the contracts. That's a pivot for us so that we can find products and services that our businesses can offer. And then we bring those contracts to our prospective people that are coming into Momentum. And then we focus on that contract throughout Momentum. So that's one of the pivots that we've made. The other pivot was finding countries that are offering better terms if you're an American business coming into their country. That's the other pivot that we made. So that's how we're able to tell you, like Case is saying, we literally had to think through, okay, how are we going to pivot in this market in order to be successful? Okay, so Case, there's a question for you. How could tariffs affect a service-based online business? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was talking about, that you might not think it affects you, but then you realize, oh, wait, all those cloud services use electricity. If the electricity is imported, there could be a tariff hit that could raise the cost. So then what would you do with that? Now, for a lot of people, if you have a web-based business, you won't be able to make any adjustments. You're just going to have to pay that higher cost. So then you start looking at other areas. And again, how can you maybe you might have to raise your own prices, and you have to look at your margins. You might have to accept a lower profit for a while. And then also look at, of course, where you could save some money just in the way that you do business. As we talk about, Melissa, you don't have to work 20 hours a day because there's so many great resources that are available to help you.
Yeah. And then like marketing as an example, Sister Sabria. So, and that's what her business is around. One of the things is we tell people there are exceptions for these tariffs. And you have to look at the tariffs to see whether or not it applies to your business, and not only to your business, but your product, because your product might be exempted. And so if you have a service, oftentimes services are not covered by the tariff, and there are some exemptions around that. So if you, for example, are working you get a contract with a country in tourism where you're doing marketing for that country to promote that country. Say you get a contract for the country of Ghana or a resort that might be in Namibia or something like that. or in the Caribbean, and they want you to market their resort in the US as a vacation destination, right? So because I think that would be a great line of business for you. That is something that you have to look to see, well, in the country of Namibia, because I think it was Namibia, didn't the new president change the visa requirements? Was that Namibia? It was one country. Well, it was Mr. Greer. Okay. Yeah. So in Namibia, I think they had a new president, but her response was, and I love that because y'all know me and fighting, but she said if our people have to have a visa to go there, you or to be there, you have to have a visa to be here. So everybody that was American that did not have a visa, they had to get a visa and leave. And so, but if you're working for a resort there to promote their resort as a place to be able to, for Americans to go for vacation, then that's exporting, number one, and it is marketing, number two. Number three, it's a service. So then you have to look to see, well, if I do business in Namibia, will my service be charged an extra 10% or whatever the tariff is if I sell it to this resort? That's how you have to analyze your product or your service. Okay. So are there any other questions? No? Okay. So thank you all for joining our discussion. I know this was a tough conversation, but I think that we really have to push our business's case not to sit back and wait. They got to come up with a game plan. They have to come up with a game plan. Any closing words from you tonight?
Yeah, thank you for Melissa. First of all, it's great to have this conversation. It is super important. I know it's top of the news every day, and as business people, we can't ignore it. And you are somebody who provides solutions to the Black International Economic Engine, so that we keep on moving forward. So it's great that we had this conversation, and I hope that there are other questions. I know there's the mechanisms to get those questions to Black and Global, and we'll answer them for you. And thanks to everyone. I really appreciate it. I think it absolutely stay global, keep looking forward. There are always opportunities. If you look through the history of the economies of the world and what looked like the worst times and so on, there was always opportunities. And it's for those people that are alert and aware and ready to take advantage of those opportunities. And as Black and Global members, that's what you are. You're ready. So and you take advantage of the resources that are here. And I think it could turn out to be just a major economic boom for everybody.
Yeah, it will, Case. It will be for our members. And because our mindset is and has to be, when a door closes, a window opens. That's how you have to think about business. You are never shut out and you're never by yourself. And you always think, I have a team. You can email us at forus@blackandglobalbusinessnetwork.com. We're over 6,000 people in this community. So somebody can provide what you're looking for. If you need support, admin, we have the Hire Africa campaign that we are on a mission for. The Hire Africa campaign is where we're asking Black entrepreneurs to hire at least one young African professional to be on your team. One of the things that for the country that I'm going to test out in Zimbabwe, where they're saying that they would make it easier and give U.S. businesses the first opportunity for contracts, Mr. Greer. That's one of the things that they're saying because they want to open the doors for more businesses to come. And I really want to have that conversation with them, Miracle, to talk about how can we as Black and Global be the portal for those contract opportunities, and the portal where if they provide the contracts to us, that we work to find matching partners in the US. So you see that pivot? That's the pivot that I'm talking about in the thinking. Not that we're shut down, but this is an opportunity case, like you said, for it to be a great economic boom for us so that we can grow our businesses more and make more money. So with that, thank you, everybody, for a wonderful evening, and we look forward to talking with you all next month. As I love to say, I am Melissa Muhammad, your sister and servant. We are the Black and Global Business Network, globalizing our connections, keeping us in the Black, and we'll see you around the globe. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you, Case.
Thank you. Good night.